All right, everyone, let's dive right in. We're going deep on a topic that probably sparks a lot of, um, curiosity and maybe even some anxiety for a lot of people out there.
Oh, absolutely.
How long does sex actually last?
Yeah.
I mean,
Big question.
it's a question that I think we all kind of, think about.
We all wonder.
We all wonder, but, is it something we really talk about? I don't know.
Not really, no.
So we're tackling it head on today. We're going to use a fascinating podcast episode as our source material.
Okay.
It features a urologist and a sexual health expert who actually led a global study on this very subject.
Interesting. I'm curious to hear what they found.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a question we all have in the back of our minds, whether we admit it or not.
Right.
And as you mentioned, there's a lot of societal pressure and misinformation out there. It makes it hard to separate fact from fiction.
Absolutely. I think, between locker room talk and Hollywood movies and let's not forget the internet.
Oh, yeah.
But it's easy to get caught up in comparisons and unrealistic expectations.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
Get some clarity and hopefully, debunk some myths along the way.
Sounds good.
First things first.
Okay.
The study, so this study that they did, focused specifically on 500 couples.
Okay.
And it defined sex as the time from penetration to ejaculation.
All right. So right off the bat, important distinction, I think.
Yep.
Because that doesn't include foreplay.
No.
Which might not be everyone's definition of, the whole...
Of the experience, no?
Yeah, the whole experience. But it was necessary for the researchers to create, like, a consistent measurement.
I see.
Yeah.
Across all the participants.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So based on that definition, they found that the average duration of sex was 5.7 minutes. What do you think? Shorter than you thought?
It is shorter than I think a lot of people assume. But I think what I find more interesting is that they observed a huge range.
Oh, wow.
Like on the short end, we're talking 3 seconds.
Really?
To 55 minutes.
Wow.
At the longest.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Huge, huge variability. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think really underscores the point that there is no right answer here.
Yeah, it's like saying, the average height of a human is 5'8".
Right.
Sure, it gives you a general idea.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell the whole story.
Not at all. And I think if we fixate too much on that average, we kind of miss this crucial point.
Yeah.
Which is that everybody is different, bodies respond differently, desires fluctuate.
Yeah.
And, what feels good varies from person to person.
Absolutely.
And couple to couple.
For sure. For sure. Okay, so let's dig into those expectations a bit more.
Okay.
Because the study also asked men and women about their ideal duration.
Okay.
Like how long would you ideally like it to last? And how long do they perceive the average to be?
Interesting.
So this is where we start to see that gap between perception and reality.
Okay.
Really widen. So men, on average, said they would ideally like sex to last around 16 minutes.
16 minutes. Okay.
And they guessed that the average was about 9 minutes.
Okay.
Women, on the other hand, preferred a much longer duration.
Okay.
Closer to 25 minutes.
25 minutes. Wow.
Wow. Right? That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying 25 minutes is impossible or wrong.
Of course not.
But it does raise some interesting questions.
For sure.
Like, where are those expectations coming from? And
Right.
how are they impacting, our actual experiences?
Absolutely. Well, I think, one obvious factor is the media,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we are constantly bombarded with images and stories
Yeah.
that portray sex as this, like, drawn-out, passionate event.
Mm-hmm.
And while that can be amazing, it's not always realistic.
Yeah. Right? It's like comparing your home-cooked meal to a photo shoot in a fancy food magazine.
Right.
It looks incredible.
Totally.
But it's probably taken hours to style and doesn't represent, the everyday experience of cooking.
Exactly. And beyond media, I think there are also these, like, cultural narratives and societal expectations at play.
Mm-hmm.
These can be subtle but incredibly powerful in shaping how we view ourselves,
Yeah.
how we view our partners,
Yeah.
and what we believe is normal or desirable.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you're saying even if we consciously reject those unrealistic portrayals,
Yeah.
we might still be carrying around some subconscious baggage about what sex should be like.
Absolutely. And that baggage, that can lead to a lot of unnecessary pressure and anxiety.
Yeah.
Think about it. You go into a sexual encounter with the expectation that it needs to last a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
You're likely to be more focused on the clock
Yeah.
than on actually connecting with your partner
Yeah.
and enjoying the experience.
It's so true. It's like trying to enjoy a concert while constantly checking your watch to see how much time is left.
Right, exactly.
You're not really present in the moment.
Yeah, and that lack of presence can actually hinder your ability to like experience pleasure and satisfaction.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So it seems like a big part of this is shifting our focus away from the duration
I think so.
towards
Yeah.
something more meaningful.
Yeah, I think what matters most isn't how long sex lasts, but how connected and satisfied you and your partner feel.
For sure. And they actually had the source material reinforce that point with an anecdote.
Okay.
One of the listener stories involved this guy named Mike.
Okay.
He shared that his partner prioritized connection
Okay.
over duration.
Yeah, Mike's story is a great example of how open communication and, understanding your partner's needs
Yeah,
can lead to a more fulfilling experience for both people.
absolutely. And there was actually some really great insight from a certified sex therapist
Okay.
featured in the episode.
Okay.
Her name was Dr. Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
and she emphasizes that getting fixated on lasting longer can backfire.
Yeah.
It can lead to stress and dissatisfaction.
It makes sense. Instead of getting caught up in performance anxiety, we should prioritize intimacy, pleasure, and like genuine connection with our partners. That's where true sexual satisfaction lies.
It's about enjoying the journey, not obsessing over the destination.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective, it can make a world of difference.
Totally.
Takes the pressure off, allows you to relax, and opens up space for greater intimacy and pleasure.
So it's not about trying to force yourself to last longer, but it's more about, exploring what feels good for both you and your partner.
Right. And that exploration involves open communication,
Yeah,
trying different techniques, and being mindful of what you're experiencing in the moment.
yeah,
Yeah, it's about embracing the unique dynamics of your relationship
yeah.
and finding what works for you.
That's great. So speaking of finding what works,
Yes.
I'm curious to hear more about those techniques
Uh-huh.
and how they play into creating a more satisfying experience. But before we get into that, let's take a quick pause.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll delve deeper into practical tips, address some common concerns, and explore how mindfulness can actually enhance your sex life.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're back and ready to unpack some practical advice for creating a more fulfilling and satisfying sexual experience. Now that we've kind of debunked some of those myths about duration,
Yeah.
let's shift our focus to what really matters: connection, pleasure, and intimacy.
I think that's a great place to pick up. And one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal, I think, is communication.
Oh, yeah?
It might sound simple, but so many couples struggle with this aspect of their relationship,
I know.
especially when it comes to sex.
It's like we talk about everything else,
Right.
work, family, what we're having for dinner.
Right, exactly.
But when it comes to, what's happening in the bedroom,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, suddenly everyone gets shy.
Exactly. And that silence can breed all sorts of misunderstandings and unmet expectations.
Totally. So how do we break down those barriers? How do we create a more open dialogue?
I think it starts with like creating a safe space for both partners to express themselves
Hmm.
without fear of judgment.
So what did that look like in practice? Is it, scheduling a formal sex talk,
Yeah.
or just being more mindful of how we communicate day to day?
I think it can be both, honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes having a dedicated conversation can be helpful,
Right.
especially if there are like specific concerns or desires that you want to address.
I see.
But it's also about, cultivating a sense of openness and vulnerability
Yeah.
in your everyday interactions.
Uh-huh.
Letting your partner know what feels good, what you'd like to try, even what you're a little nervous about.
It's almost like learning each other's love language, but for pleasure.
I love that analogy because it really highlights the importance of paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
What are your partner's sighs and moans telling you?
Uh-huh.
What kind of touch do they respond to most enthusiastically?
Yeah.
These are all clues
Yeah.
that can help you deepen your connection and understanding.
That's a great reminder to really be present in the moment and tune into what your partner's communicating,
Yes.
both directly and indirectly.
Totally.
And speaking of being present, you know, the source material touched on the power of mindfulness.
Yes.
How can that play a role in enhancing sexual experiences?
Mindfulness can be a game changer. It's about bringing your full attention to the sensations that you're experiencing in your body
Mm-hmm.
without judgment. Instead of getting caught up in like thoughts about performance or worrying about how long it's lasting,
Uh-huh.
you're simply savoring the moment as it unfolds.
It's like almost like hitting the pause button on all those like distracting thought and
Exactly.
really immersing yourself in that physical and emotional connection.
Exactly. And there are so many like simple mindfulness exercises you can try.
Yeah.
Focus on your breath, notice the textures and temperatures you feel,
Uh-huh.
appreciate the beauty of your partner's body. It's about cultivating this like non-judgmental awareness of what's happening
Hmm.
in the present moment.
And I imagine, the more you practice mindfulness in your daily life,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes to access that state of presence during, those intimate moments.
Absolutely. It's like training a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And the benefits extend far beyond the bedroom. Mindfulness can reduce stress, improve focus, and even deepen your connection to yourself and others.
It's a win-win all around. So I know some listeners might be wondering about specific techniques or positions that can help prolong intercourse.
Sure.
Any insights on that front?
Well, I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah,
What works for one couple might not work for another.
right.
And honestly, I would encourage you to approach this with like a sense of curiosity and playfulness
Uh-huh.
rather than focusing on a specific outcome.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's not about trying to hack your way to a longer duration,
No.
but more about exploring what feels good for both of you
Exactly.
and finding a rhythm that works.
Exactly. And that might involve experimenting with different positions,
Okay.
paying attention to what types of stimulation, increase or decrease arousal,
Uh-huh.
and even incorporating like techniques like the squeeze technique,
Oh, yeah.
which can be helpful for delaying ejaculation.
And that's something that can be practiced with a partner to build awareness and control, right?
Absolutely. It's all about communication, collaboration, and, finding what works best for you as a couple. And remember, it's not just about penetration. There are so many other ways to give and receive pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. Oral sex, manual stimulation, even just cuddling and kissing can be incredibly intimate and satisfying.
It's about expanding our definition of sex beyond just intercourse
Yeah.
and embracing like the full spectrum of erotic possibilities.
That's such an important point. And it ties back to what we were discussing earlier, about shifting the focus away from duration
Right.
and towards creating a more holistic and fulfilling experience.
Totally. And speaking of creating a more holistic experience, let's talk about the role of foreplay.
Yes.
I know the study we discussed earlier, didn't include foreplay in its measurement of duration, but
Yeah.
it's such a crucial part of the overall experience.
It's like setting the stage for an incredible performance.
Right.
You wouldn't just jump right into the main act without any buildup or anticipation.
Right, exactly. Foreplay is all about teasing, tantalizing,
Yeah,
and creating a sense of like playful anticipation.
for sure.
It's about building arousal, deepening your connection, and getting both partners ready for a truly satisfying experience.
And the great thing about foreplay is that it can last like as long as you want it to.
Absolutely. It's all about savoring the journey, not rushing to the destination.
Totally.
And there are so many ways to get creative with foreplay.
Oh, yeah.
Try incorporating massage, sensual touch, erotic storytelling,
Oh, yeah.
or even just playful banter. It's about finding what ignites that spark between you and your partner.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, and remember, foreplay doesn't have to end when penetration begins.
Yeah.
You can continue to incorporate those sensual touches and techniques
Of course. Yeah.
throughout the entire experience.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping the passion and connection alive.
Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the physical aspects of intimacy, but it's important to acknowledge the emotional component as well.
Oh, for sure.
Our emotional state can have a huge impact on our sexual experience.
Absolutely. Stress, anxiety, relationship issues, all of those things,
Totally.
it can affect our libido and our ability to enjoy sex.
Right. It's like trying to, relax and have fun when you've got a million things racing through your mind.
It just doesn't work.
Doesn't work now.
And, on the flip side, feeling loved, secure, and connected can actually enhance our desire and pleasure.
Yeah.
When we feel safe and comfortable with our partner, it creates like a much more conducive environment for intimacy.
For sure.
So, if you're struggling with low libido or, sexual dysfunction,
Yeah.
it's important to address any like underlying emotional or relational issues.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes those issues need to be addressed before you can fully enjoy and appreciate your sexual experiences.
Right.
And that might involve, seeking professional help
Yeah.
from a therapist or counselor.
Yeah. Therapy can be incredibly helpful in this regard.
Absolutely.
It can provide support, guidance, and tools for improving improving communication, managing stress, and, enhancing intimacy.
It's about taking like a holistic approach to sexual health,
Hmm.
addressing both the physical and emotional aspects.
Absolutely. And remember, there's no shame in seeking help.
Of course not. It's a sign of strength and self-care.
Totally.
It shows that you're committed to, improving your well-being and creating a more fulfilling life for yourself and your partner.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to emphasize that seeking help can be a truly transformative experience. It can not only address like specific issues, but also like deepen your understanding of yourself, your partner, and the dynamics of your relationship.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground so far. We've talked about communication, mindfulness, techniques, and even, the emotional side of things. But before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your perspective on, how societal pressures and cultural norms influence our perception of sex duration. Because even though we're trying to shift away from those expectations, they're still out there, lurking in the background.
You're absolutely right. The societal pressures don't just disappear overnight. And in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those cultural influences in more detail, discuss how we can challenge those limiting beliefs, and ultimately embrace a more inclusive and empowering view of sexuality.
Sounds fascinating. I'm looking forward to diving into that. And for our listeners, we'll be right back after a short break. All right, we're back and ready to tackle, well, a topic that can be a bit tricky,
Yeah,
but so important to unpack.
absolutely.
How societal pressures and cultural norms, how do those things shape our views on sex,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to, duration?
It's fascinating how these expectations, they just become like so ingrained in us, often without us even realizing it.
Yeah.
We're bombarded with messages from a very young age
Uh-huh.
about what's considered normal or desirable.
Yeah, it's like those messages just become a part of the air we breathe. We might not even consciously register them,
Right.
but they're still influencing us, our
Right.
thoughts, behaviors.
Absolutely. Think about the media we consume, you know, movies, TV shows,
Yeah.
even advertising. How often is sex portrayed as this like effortless, passionate encounter that lasts for hours?
Oh, yeah.
Culminating in like simultaneous earth-shattering orgasms.
Yeah, talk about setting the bar unrealistically high.
I
It's like
know.
we're all supposed to be these perfectly synchronized sexual Olympians performing on cue.
Right.
No wonder so many people feel inadequate or anxious.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the influence of, pornography,
Oh, yeah.
which often presents like a very distorted and unrealistic view of sex,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when it comes to duration and performance. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to
Yeah.
these highly edited and often unattainable standards.
Yeah, it's like comparing your home cooking to a, gourmet chef's Instagram feed.
Right, exactly.
Sure, it looks amazing, but it's not real life.
Right. Yeah.
And constantly striving for that level of perfection can, like, take all the joy out of cooking.
Totally. And I think the same goes for sex.
Yeah.
When we're constantly comparing ourselves to these like unrealistic ideals, we miss out on the joy and connection of authentic intimacy.
So how do we break free from these limiting beliefs? How do we start to rewrite the script,
Yeah.
on what healthy and satisfying sex looks like?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Uh-huh.
Recognizing the influence of these societal and cultural messages, that's the first step.
Okay.
Once we become aware of like the ways in which we've been conditioned to think about sex,
Uh-huh.
we can start to, challenge those beliefs.
So it's almost like putting on a critical lens and examining those messages that we've internalized about sex.
Right.
Like, where did those beliefs come from?
Right.
Are they serving us?
Exactly.
They align with our own values and desires.
Exactly. And as we start to question those beliefs, we can begin to like create new narratives
Uh-huh.
that are more aligned with our own experiences and values.
It's about reclaiming our sexuality and defining what pleasure and intimacy mean for us
Yes.
on our own terms.
Absolutely. And, that might look different for everyone.
Yeah.
There is no one-size-fits-all approach. What matters is that we're honoring our own needs and desires and creating a sexual experience that feels authentic and fulfilling.
And that includes having, Open and honest conversations with our
Yes.
partners about our expectations, our anxieties, and preferences.
Yes.
Creating a safe and judgment-free space for dialogue is crucial.
It is. It is. Communication is key, I
Oh,
think.
for sure.
It allows us to understand each other's needs and desires
Yeah.
and to co-create a sexual experience that works for both partners.
And remember, it's not just about talking.
Right.
It's also about listening,
Yes.
really tuning into our partner's verbal and nonverbal cues
Totally.
can help us, deepen our connection and understanding.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up with some key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay.
First, remember, there's no right amount of time for sex to last. It's about quality, not quantity.
Absolutely. Focus on connection, pleasure, intimacy.
Yeah.
Let go of those societal pressures and embrace what feels good for you and your partner.
Communicate openly and honestly with each other.
Yeah.
Share your desires, your anxieties, your preferences. Challenge those limiting beliefs and create new narratives about sex
Yes.
that are more inclusive and empowering and aligned with your own values.
Yes, and most importantly, have fun.
Yes.
Sex should be a source of joy and pleasure, not stress and anxiety.
So there you have it. The truth about sex duration, the society pressures that, can shape our perceptions, and the power of reclaiming your sexuality. We hope this deep dive has left you feeling informed, empowered, and ready to embrace a more authentic and fulfilling sexual experience. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. Keep exploring, keep communicating, and keep discovering what works for you.